markets of interest for investors.
Indonesia, market of interest?
India, Indonesia. Because the demographics, the population size, demographics, the things that you need, as you develop economically, there's still many things that needs to be done. So it's a lot of opportunities for companies around the world to do big projects in Indonesia. And so the question is, since 2024, why is it going to be advantageous or important for Indonesia? It's because of global politics.
Hari ini kita kedatangan tamu yang spesial langsung dari Beijing. Namanya Kok Shen. Beliau ini mungkin sedikit pengenalan. Sebelumnya Direktur Kepatuhan dan Hukum untuk Nokia sama untuk Diebold. Diebold ini jadi kalau Nokia mungkin teman-teman secara umum familiar ya. Jadi kalau Diebold ini perusahaan dari Ohio yang fokusnya membuat mesin. Gak cuma hardware-nya tapi termasuk dengan software-nya. Bahkan beberapa ATM yang kalau teman-teman nanti narik duit nih, nah itu juga mereknya Diebold ya. So today during the discussion, I would like to ask Kok Shen maybe in English, and if there is something we need to dig deeper, I'm going to translate into bahasa.
Sure.
So Kok Shen, first, thank you very much. Our honor to have you today. So knowing that first you are the expert for the compliance industry, anti-fraud, even anti-corruption. And knowing that also you live in China, in Beijing for years, and being practicing your expertise for years, my first questions that pop into my mind, could you tell us, is there any relation, seeing the China right now, the development is very fast, very huge, talking about from the economic perspective, now they're like very big. Is there any correlation, this situation with the anti-corruption or maybe anti-fraud or maybe with the compliance issues from your perspective?
Okay, so when we think about anti-corruption, anti-bribery, the typical kind of symptoms or common symptoms of corruption, you would see some element of fraud because someone will need to do a fake contract or fake invoice. That's quite one common symptom. The other symptom you will see is conflict of interest. Right? So these three categories of compliance, anti-corruption, anti-fraud, anti-conflict of interest, tend to be handled together. Because sometimes when you're doing investigation in one area, it may open up potential breach of another area. And if you see the FCPA law, you have two branches. One is bribery, the other one is books and records. So both are just as important because the penalties are the same. And therefore, when we focus on let's say looking at fraud investigation, if you detect a bribe or if you detect books and records issue, these are things that need to be handled together comprehensively. So in China, what we've seen starting from over 10 years ago, with the focus of the government on anti-corruption, we see a lot of focused attention on companies when they see that also in China, because of the amount of enforcement that is not just something that headquarters wants you to do, or that UK government wants you to do. It's something that now China wants you to also focus on. So companies, if we talk about international companies who have been doing business in China for 20 years, from the headquarters level, in the past you used to have headquarters trying to ask all its local subsidiaries to follow one standard, usually driven by global at the global level, right? This is the anti-corruption policy that we want every entity to follow. And the difficulty was when you have a global policy coming to each subsidiary country, anywhere in the world, then you have the local business culture aspect. So, if you have your employees say, no, we don't think that if you do business in a compliant way, you can succeed in this country. And then you have a disconnect. So headquarters will say, yeah, I gave you the global policy to follow. And you have employees at the country level saying, no, this policy, if I follow this global policy, there's no way I can secure any business. Right? And so with China saying, well, this is the same standard, we want to also stop corruption, then you see less and less pushback from the employees to say, no, we say, well, in China, this is also the standard that we are going to observe. And there's no second standard that we should follow. So it becomes easier for a regional compliance officer to manage one policy for the region.
So what I understand that somehow that in China they have two pushes. The first, from the domestic, the government of China, they want to push the enforcement. Using your terminology, enforcement, and then also from the global international company, maybe which is based in China.
Exactly.
But then my next question is, how serious is the government of China in eradicating corruption?
Yes. Well, what we see, if you look at state-owned companies. If you do business with a state-owned company, it's part of the bidding process. Very clearly, they'll tell you exactly what you cannot do. So they'll ask you to sign a commitment letter that you will not commit certain type of activity that is deemed to be corrupt. And it can be very strict. It can be no entertainment, no golfing, no gifts. And that standard might be even higher than your own company's code of conduct.
You mean from the state-owned enterprise?
Enterprise.
The standard of anti-graft, anti-corruption.
Yes. So when you go for bidding, you asked to commit to a vendor code of conduct, right? So companies, we have our own internal employee code of conduct. But if you want to be a supplier or a vendor to a state-owned company, they will say, well, this is the code of conduct that you must follow if you want to do business with us. And the surprising thing is if you go through that requirements, it's actually a very high standard, sometimes higher than some international company standard. So from that point of view, if you have obviously if you say I will refuse to comply, then you're not going. Then you can't even bid.
Get the project.
You won't be allowed to bid. Your bid will not even be looked at. And then for companies who have been exposed to investigation, whether it's in China or anywhere in the world, they will ask you to declare is your company currently or have they been under any compliance investigation. Right? So the second you say yes, then it's a black mark against your company. They may not even take your bid seriously. Right? So companies who have gotten themselves into trouble, it could be outside of China, you are still required to declare.
Okay. Jadi teman-teman menarik ya apa yang dikatakan sama Kok Shen ini. Jadi berdasarkan pengalaman beliau, beberapa puluh tahun sebagai direktur di perusahaan Nokia sama perusahaan Diebold tadi, mesin ATM. Pengalamannya menceritakan bahwa standar anti korupsi, jadi standar anti korupsi itu kan dari pemerintah diturunkan ke level teknis. Level teknis apa? Tadi dikasih contoh. Contohnya misalnya kalau di Indonesia kita kenalnya BUMN. Kalau di sana tadi dibilangnya ada namanya state owned company atau enterprise. Jadi perusahaan yang dimiliki sama pemerintah. Nah, jadi kalau si state owned enterprise ini dia mau bikin tender, mau bikin apa sih, siapa yang ada kebutuhan, perusahaan mana yang mau jadi vendor, itu ternyata pertama calon-calon vendor ini harus punya komitmen tertulis tanda tangan. Apa konkretnya? Bahkan sampai nggak boleh main golf, nggak boleh ditraktir makan ke restoran, apalagi dikasih uang jajan. Nah dari situ outputnya apa? Sehingga pertama kualitas barang yang masuk diterima dan dipakai oleh pemerintah tentunya kualitas barang yang bagus, yang terbaik, nggak oplosan. Kedua, kalau kita bicara anggaran, otomatis potensi jadi bengkak, anggarannya di markup, harusnya difilter di level pertama, ini sudah terjamin. Bahkan harus ada kewajiban deklarasi untuk calon vendornya tadi. Kamu pernah ada kasus hukum nggak? Pernah dikenakan investigasi atau tidak? Dan BUMN di Cina itu dia punya daftar blacklist. Mana yang ini akan bisa lagi ikut, mana yang tidak akan ikut. Dan yang paling penting, keseriusan pemerintah untuk memberantas korupsi itu tidak hanya di pemerintah pusat, tapi menyeluruh ke seluruh Cina. Makanya tadi pertanyaan di awal yang kita kritisi, Cina kan sekarang secara perspektif ekonomi ya, salah satu yang menguasai global dunia. Ada nggak sih kaitannya dengan ikhtiar anti korupsinya? Ternyata katanya Koksen kaitannya sangat erat. Bahkan menceritakan juga tadi beberapa contoh teknis di tempat yang industri dia bekerja, bahkan sampai beberapa perusahaan ini tidak hanya tunduk atau patuh terhadap regulasi di Cina, tapi juga di internasional. Contoh, ada namanya FCPA atau FCPA. Jadi singkatannya dari Foreign Corrupt Practice Act ya. Jadi intinya dia ada 2 buku, 2 chapter. Satu fokus ke terima suap, bribery itu diinvestigasi sama US DOJ. Satu lagi itu tentang kita patuh nggak untuk nyatet pembukuan, laporan keuangan. Kalau dicatat ada supporting dokumennya atau tidak. Bahkan kita nggak taat aja, kita nggak comply, lupa nyatet, itu dikena denda. Pertanyaannya, kalau dikena denda, bayar dendanya ke pemerintah Cina atau pemerintah Amerika? Ternyata masuknya ke pemerintah Amerika. Jadi teman-teman bisa bayangin nih, ini ada perusahaan. Perusahaannya berdiri di Cina. Bisnisnya di Cina. Dia lupa nyatet di Cina, dia bayar denda tapi duitnya masuk ke Amerika. Atau dia bisnisnya di Cina, tapi dia terima atau memberikan suap kepada entitas manapun di seluruh dunia. Tapi selama ada beberapa standar ya, apakah dia ada afiliasinya dengan misalnya perusahaan di Amerika, transaksi dengan di Amerika, itu yang nanti dia subject to FCPA-nya seperti apa, itu juga dia investigasi dan bayar dendanya ke Amerika. Nah, hal-hal seperti ini ternyata yang membuat penegakan hukum di Cina nggak main-main. Kaitannya apa tadi diceritakan, ekonominya tumbuhnya pesat banget. Investasi masuk juga sangat besar. Nah, sedikit di luar dari topik, ini menarik. Saya mau sedikit nanya ke Koksen. Tadi malam dia ceritain ke saya, saat ini kalau teman-teman ke Cina, khususnya ke Beijing, naik mobil, kalau teman-teman di Jakarta naik mobil ada yang nyupir kan, di situ mobilnya udah gak ada supirnya. Bahkan teman-teman ke restoran, teman-teman ke hotel yang suka ada pramusaji, suka ada orang yang terima di resepsionis, semuanya diganti sama robot. Bahkan kita di kamar hotel nih, kita mau pesen, saya mau pesen bakmi goreng. Yang datang bukan lagi orang, yang datang itu robot. Robot kayak di film Star Wars, dia ngasih makanan, ngasih minuman. Apa kaitannya dengan anti fraud sama anti korupsi? Ternyata sangat erat. So Koksen, I just spoke to our friend about the condition right now in China, especially in Beijing, on the street that you told me last night. Some cars right now, they do not have a driver. Driverless.
Self-driving.
Self-driving. Jadi bahkan mobilnya itu udah gak ada yang driver. So we talk about maybe the high growth of technology, of financial, of banking. Is there any direct connection with the anti-fraud and anti-corruption, what you call policy or enforcement conducted by the government that you said before?
Yes, so I guess with new technology, a very popular trend for everywhere in the world, not just China, is digitalization.
Yeah.
That means more and more of your company's data and processes are transferring on into devices, electronic devices and cloud servers located in many locations in the world. So when we look at another trend would be what they call BYOD.
BYOD.
Bring your own device. Meaning that companies allow employees to use their own handphone. If you want,
that data privacy.
okay, so we will talk about that. So, okay, let's say you are Apple guy and then I'm Android guy, and I say, well, I want to use Android, and you say, no, I prefer to use Apple.
Yeah.
So the company says, well, you're flexible. Use your own phone. I don't buy you your phone. I don't need to buy you a phone because you have a phone already. And and some employees say, hey, I'm doing more design work. I prefer to use Apple laptop. I already have an Apple laptop. The company is fine. Go and use your own laptop.
Yeah.
Right. So from a data anti-corruption point of view, we talk about access to data. Right. In order to do our investigations, we need access to data. And the question is, if the asset is the property of the person the target you want to investigate, can you get that lawful permission to take the device?
Yeah.
That's first step. And then you look inside the device, what we have is all the apps.
Yeah.
And for communication apps, usually companies will have an Outlook app for your email, corporate email. But then you also have your social messaging apps. The social messaging apps would be like WhatsApp, but in China they have the same version or similar version called WeChat.
Yeah.
And in other countries you might have Line and all that. And you see the trend now is more and more business communication, shifting out of the traditional Outlook style of emails. In the past, we would see SMS, a lot of SMS, but now very little SMS in China. Everything shifted to WeChat.
Yeah.
Okay, but the WeChat account is a personal account. It's not a corporate account.
Yeah.
Right? So if you are doing an investigation, you do not have the admin rights to the person's WeChat account.
Yeah.
Right? And the device is the person's own device. So how can you lawfully look into the data? From a privacy point of view, it says, no, all this is my private communication with my family and my friends, nothing to do with work. But in fact, in real life, it's a very efficient way to communicate in small groups through WeChat. And you see a lot of the content in the WeChat is actually related to work.
I see.
Yes. Now, the second part is back to privacy. To have good privacy, you need to secure all your data network. And normally in the past, data network would be your company server, right? Your company laptops and your company phones. Yeah. This would be the usual network. But now this is extended, so companies will reduce cost. Firstly, the servers will be reduced. They outsource the server, so they rent cloud from third party.
Nice.
Right, so the third party will have the data, and as I mentioned earlier, for the devices, they are more flexible. So and then when you have the COVID trend from the times of COVID, working from home, so the person will go home to his house, and then now he's on his home Wi-Fi by accessing the company network. So when you say securing the data network, it includes the person's home at night, home network. In every different home, you have multiple users sharing one network, and their devices also become put the company's data network at risk. Because anyone who installs a spyware or a virus might go through that and and compromise the whole data system. So from the phone, apps that you download for free, or sometimes there are certain apps that trigger you to download other apps without you realizing. Every app that gets added into your handphone increases the risk that a hacker might come in, access a server and take away personal data of employee or clients or customers, and that data becomes privacy risk.
I see. Jadi teman-teman, kalau kita coba resumekan ya dari apa yang Koksen bicarakan. Pertama, niat atau ikhtiar pemerintah untuk anti korupsi fraud di awal dijelaskan sangat kuat. Yang kedua, perkembangan teknologi ditambah ada isu COVID sebelumnya yang memaksa orang harus attach dengan teknologi. Teman bayangkan, anti korupsi membuat suatu negara untuk berkembang mengutilize teknologi bisa sampai sejauh ini. Coba kita compare. Di Indonesia terakhir kali kalau nggak salah ada kasus yang menimpa salah satu kementerian di Kominfo terkait kalau nggak salah kasusnya BTS. Nah, bayangin teman-teman, di pemerintah Cina kasus-kasus seperti ini itu tidak hanya tanda kutip diberantas pelakunya, tapi juga didalami ini bagaimana blueprint perkaranya. Agar apa? Agar tadi bagaimana pekerjaan dari perusahaan sehari-harinya bisa dengan nyaman, leluasa untuk memaksimalkan tadi misalnya kemampuan teknologi. Jadi kalau ditanya kenapa tadi contoh kasus yang utilize teknologi sama Koksen di highlight, jadi I just want to tell our audience that one of your company called
Global Law Office,
Global Law Office is also focusing on data and cyber security,
GLO is the oldest law firm in China, so it's about 40 over years old. We have about 700 lawyers. So the department I'm working in now is data compliance team.
Yep.
So we focus on data, but because today the concept of data is very broad. Data includes not only privacy data, but includes trade secrets, corporate data, financial information is all data, including now we are looking at data as an asset. And we know traditionally IP, patents, trademarks, they are assets, but can database be an asset of a company? Can you lend a company money based on the security of data? So I think the direction that China potentially will move to would be to treat also data as a asset.
Jadi menarik ya teman-teman, kita ternyata awalnya kita bicara tentang semangat anti korupsi, kita ngeliat perkembangan ekonomi di Cina, sekarang kita sedikit shifting, ternyata di Cina itu data itu menjadi aset yang sangat penting. Jadi karena di dalamnya tadi diceritakan, dalam data itu ada rahasia dagang, ada rahasia misalnya suatu perusahaan, dia ada research departemennya, ada R&D-nya, nah rahasia-rahasia itu ternyata menjadi data yang sifatnya aset yang sangat berharga. Nah, now I want to move a little bit from China to Singapore. Jadi ini walaupun dia tinggal kerja di Beijing, tapi so you are a Singaporean, right? Singapore citizen. Jadi Koksen ini juga warga negara Singapura. Karena Singapura tetangga Indonesia yang paling dekat nih. Pertanyaannya sama. Jadi once I read a book about the beginning of Singapore and the influence where Lee Kuan Yew took a big part, bigger role of it. Di buku itu saya baca kalau sejarahnya kurang lebih Singapura itu awalnya dia tanda kutip ya, dia sama teman-teman kita dari Malaysia, dia bilang udah kamu jangan ke Malaysia, kamu di sana aja, di Singapura aja. Di mana Singapura itu tanah kosong yang manusianya terbatas. I'm telling them at that time the Singapore didn't have anything,
any resources,
nggak punya apa-apa. Jangankan sumber daya alam, bahkan kita bicara sesederhana mau tanam apa segala macam itu terbatas. Dan saat itu Lee Kuan Yew berpikir, karena because Lee Kuan Yew I think he himself a lawyer ya.
Yes.
He graduated from a law school. Jadi yang pertama dia terapkan, if I'm not mistaken, he said law enforcement is number one to gain people trust. So people will feel confidence to bring their money. Jadi untuk menciptakan kepercayaan yang tinggi bagi masyarakat terutama internasional untuk bawa duitnya ke Singapura, nomor satu adalah rasa keamanan yang ditimbulkan dari nomor satu penegakan hukum. Baru selanjutnya dibuat infrastruktur keuangan, perbankan, akhirnya Singapura bisa menjadi saat ini. So talking about that example, how Lee Kuan Yew in the first time trying to build the public trust by enforcing the law as a first priority. I mean, of course, relating to anti-corruption. What is your perspective about this by looking at Singapore right now as I think one of the biggest financial hub in the world, coming from the land which has nothing. So what do you think about this?
Well, I think, as you mentioned, investors, they want to see stability so they can plan for the long term. So if you can't plan for long term, you won't dare to invest a lot of money. And for us, actually, I think for Singaporeans, as you mentioned, we don't have any natural resources.
Yeah.
No water, no petrol, no forest, nothing. So it's all about the human resources. Being able to offer any international investor the best quality human resource that you can have. Obviously, in terms of having educational skills is one aspect, but the other aspect is the discipline. Or sense of integrity. Integrity, right? So that is an aspect that it's very hard to train in school. How do you train? How do you create a course for integrity and create a workforce?
Yeah, it's so abstract. Yeah.
So I guess one way is to see education as a universal equalizer. That this person might come from a poor family, this person might come from a richer family, but if he works hard and he's well educated, he can catch up or even have an equal quality of life. So if you make education accessible to everyone, then of course people will not feel that in life I have been not so lucky and then I need to use unfair means or illegal means to raise ahead or catch up with other people.
Jadi teman-teman menarik ya, Kok Hsen bilang saat itu waktu Singapura pertama kali berdiri bahkan nggak punya apa-apa, bahkan tadi katanya air aja terbatas, hutan dia nggak punya. Jadi investasi terbesar tadi kita bicara penegakan hukum, selain itu investasi terbesar adalah manusia, khususnya di bidang edukasi. Nah tadi diceritakan outputnya apa? Menciptakan sistem masyarakat yang punya nilai integritas yang tinggi. Salah satu caranya gimana? Tadi diceritakan Singapura itu nggak peduli kalian itu orang miskin, orang kaya, bapaknya siapa. Kalau misalnya orang miskin, kalian kerja keras, pinter, berhasil, pemerintah menjamin kalian akan mendapatkan kesejahteraan yang lebih layak. Jadi intinya apa? Merit based system. Tidak ada kolusi, tidak ada nepotisme. Yang akhirnya sekarang kita lihat sekarang Singapura, orang yang terbaik, produk yang terbaik yang bisa di-offer ke masyarakat. Balik lagi, ternyata nomor satu intinya integritas. Ya esensi dari integritas juga dibangun dari apa? Pemerintah ini investasi besar-besaran kepada masyarakatnya, fokus ke dalam edukasi. Jadi kalau kita lihat sekarang teman-teman, Singapura sebagai salah satu hub keuangan yang paling besar kita bicara dunia, ternyata dimulainya dari tanah kosong yang nggak punya apa-apa. Orang yang terbatas, nggak punya sumber daya alam, tapi nomor satu yang dibangun, integritas. So, last question, Kok Hsen. We've been talking about China, anti-corruption, how China could grow very, very big like today. Also, concerning to issues related to technology, like a driverless car, we said, and then we shift a little bit to Singapore. if you see Indonesia right now, and then I know that you've been dealing with some people in Indonesia, business in Indonesia. Do you think what's your best advice, especially for us, including for me? You can maybe talk about things relating to anti-corruption, anti-fraud, or maybe data, or maybe education, integrity. For us, as the best investment to enhance our economic situation, let's say we're talking about in 5 or 7 or maybe 10 years. What should we prioritize? Learning from your experience. What should we maybe shortly start doing it or implementing it? Or maybe things that we need to not only develop but to correct, to do corrections. Could you maybe share a bit?
Yes. If we look at 2024 next year, because we are almost
2024,
right? We are almost at the end of the year. So I think next year, what can we look forward to for Indonesia?
Yeah.
Well, Indonesia will definitely be one of the markets of interest for investors.
Indonesia, market of interest.
India, Indonesia, because the demographics, the population size, demographics, the things that you need. As you develop economically, there's still many things that needs to be done. So it's a lot of opportunities for companies around the world to do big projects in Indonesia, and so the question is, since 2024. Why is it going to be advantageous or important for Indonesia? It's because of global politics. We have a war in Europe, elections in the US, right? And then China also facing political challenges or diplomatic challenges around the region. They'll definitely be, I think, looking at Southeast Asia to build their relationship. And so I see, at least for Indonesia, we can see in the recent times with TikTok coming to Indonesia, is the market that is of a big enough size that outside of in ASEAN, there's no other population of this size.
Yes.
And with the political situation, if it can be stable, for them, I think it will be a very attractive area. So the question for Indonesians is, okay, let's say if I want to attract investments from China, what are the things that we can do to make the transition over or the transfer over of assets or technology more efficient? And then longer term, you might say, well, the two ways of investing: companies that come into Indonesia and they take resources. Right? And they say, we'll buy cheap resources, we'll give you a fair market price, and then we'll take it away. But what does it do for the citizens? So you might say, well, if you want to access our resources, there must be some long-term goal, and not just pay me a market price for the resource. We might want education or technology transfer, or exchange of services. That if we open certain service industries to you in Indonesia, can you also open the same industries up to our companies in China?
Or Singapore.
Right. So when you think of negotiations, think long term. Right, and not just one-time transaction.
So thanks, Kok Sen. Let me wrap up your insights. It's very benefiting actually. Jadi teman-teman, ini menarik ya. Kok Sen barusan bilang, mungkin beberapa orang sudah ngeh, tapi mungkin beberapa lagi belum ngeh. Jadi kalau kita ngeliat peta politik dunia secara global, ternyata ini situasi yang bisa jadi mungkin menguntungkan bagi Indonesia. Perang di Eropa, ada election di Amerika, bahkan stability di China juga ada beberapa isu. Jadi arus investasi itu mulai turun ke arah Southeast Asia yang mungkin nanti akan fokus ke India sama ke Indonesia. Nah untuk ini, kalau kita bicara 2024, Indonesia mau nggak mau harus ready. Kata kuncinya apa tadi? Belajar dari Singapura agar arus capital flow investment masuk Indonesia stability. Nah tadi di awal kita sudah ngobrol banyak, kita bicara anti corruption, anti fraud, law enforcement, stability nomor 1. Jadi pertama yang kita harus siap adalah ada potensi arus investasi karena situasi global seperti itu bisa diprioritaskan masuk ke Indonesia dengan catatan kalau kondisi stabilitas politik, hukum terutama dan ekonomi di Indonesia sudah stabil. Nah, yang kedua, mungkin kita sedikit bicara long term, jangka yang lebih lama. Saat ada bargain, ada nego, asing masuk investasi, mungkin dia mau bargain dengan sumber daya alam kita, natural resources, kita juga harus bisa bargain ke mereka. Tadi dibilang, kuncinya salah satunya adalah transfer otak, dalam konkretnya salah satunya transfer teknologi. Jadi bisa jadi, oke lah saya jual beli misalnya dengan negara asing, tapi dengan syarat kamu bikin jasa atau sesuatu bangun di Indonesia. Atau sebaliknya juga nanti di Indonesia kamu bangun di negara kamu. Dalam konteks apa? Konteksnya bisa apa saja. Nah ini bagi teman-teman, terutama di luar sana, apalagi yang punya potensi atau konsep bisnis tertentu, atau mungkin di bidang yang lain kita bicara sektor publik, teman-teman sebagai ASN, sebagai guru, sebagai dosen, harus siap-siap nih 2024. Karena apa? Dengan catatan tadi, situasi global seperti ini. Apalagi tadi contohnya dia bilang satu, TikTok aja masuk ke Indonesia. TikTok masuk ke Indonesia berarti ada sesuatu, ada potensi besar yang Indonesia punya. Dan itu nomor 1 harus dimanfaatkan oleh kita, Indonesia. So, Kok Shien, before we end this talk, anything you would like to add or?
Yeah, so if we talk about creating compliance ecosystem, healthy ecosystem for compliance in Indonesia, what are some of the things that we can think about? One is when you have enforcement agencies, whether it's anti-corruption law or privacy law, whether or not to use a more consultative approach with industry, so that they are also, they feel that they are part of the building of the legal infrastructure that they must comply with in the future. And so you get feedback. Early feedback from in different companies, industries, different types of industries about what do you think about this if we put this law, and then explain to them, using white paper or draft for review. You can get input from the industry, and the industry side, they get early advance warning that the law is going to change this way, and so what must we do internally in the company so that when the law is starts to be effective, they are ready. So you have a nice, a fair amount of time to prepare. You have the ability to also share whether the law is realistic or not realistic. And this way, I think it builds trust also between the regulators and the different industries, so that they work together to prevent certain type of risk. And I think that kind of environment will be the healthiest environment, so that companies don't try to hide or work around the law.
Ini juga menarik teman-teman, jadi belajar dari pengalaman Kok Shien ya, baik di Beijing maupun di Singapura, ada konteksnya membangun ekosistem dengan tingkat kepatuhan hukum yang sangat baik. Jadi ekosistem dari legal compliance, tapi nggak cuma law compliance, kalau kita lihat besarnya termasuk konteks integritas. Dan bahkan dalam prosesnya ini antara sektor publik, regulator yang membuat peraturan dengan private sector, dengan perusahaan yang punya industri, itu harus melebur. Dan mereka harus saling berkonsultasi. Kenapa? Bisa jadi gini, nanti akan ada perubahan regulasi. Nah, teman-teman di private sector, di industri harus dari sejak lama tahu dulu nih, ancer-ancer. Jadi apa agar saya bisa nyaman berbisnis di Indonesia dengan mengedepankan integritas, jadi nggak pakai jalan belakang atau apa. Nah ini harus ada masa transisi dan persiapan. Nah ini setiap stakeholders dari beberapa pihak harus saling melebur, minimal ngobrol. Karena apa, ujung-ujungnya kepentingannya kan bagaimana kita meningkatkan daya atau taraf kesejahteraan masyarakat Indonesia dengan ekosistem yang memiliki integritas yang baik. Jadi apa? Investasi asing masuk, dari dalam negeri juga bisnisnya semakin tumbuh, uang peredarannya banyak, tidak lari keluar dan tidak dikorupsi atau hilang karena fraud seperti itu. So, Koksense, that's we wrap up our discussions.
Yes.
Once again, Kokshen, thank you very much for you willing to come here and talk about Singapore and Beijing and China. We are so grateful of it.
So thank you for inviting me here.
Thank you,
Baku.
Kokshen.
Bye.
Thank you.